Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you to this lesson on the writing process. Today we'll be talking about the many steps that you can take on your path to writing a great essay. I want to start this lesson off with a question. Do you know the difference between editing and revision? Here's a hint. One deals with your organization and focus, while the other deals with spelling and grammar. Please pause this presentation and take a moment to think. In most cases, when students say they revised, they usually mean that they edited or fixed the small stuff, such as spelling or grammar. Because this class is called the writing process, we will be focusing more on revision, which quite literally asks you to re-envision your entire essay, looking at the organization, the focus, and the flow. When you revise, you might move or delete entire paragraphs and make other substantial changes to your essay. Now I want you to take a moment to look at some of the steps of the writing process that are listed on this slide, such as publishing, pre-writing, brainstorming, editing, drafting, revising, and responding. Now I want you to think back to the essays that you've written for school. Do you take all of these steps every time you write an essay? If so, in what order do you complete the steps? Pause the presentation and take a moment to think about it. Different writers have different approaches to the writing process. I really like this diagram because it doesn't show the writing process as linear. In other words, you may have to circle back to the same step multiple times during the writing process. Obviously, pre-writing will be done in the beginning and publishing comes last, but you may find yourself writing, responding to others, and revising multiple times. In fact, in the middle of your writing process, you may even go back to the brainstorming stage. So the writing process really is a fluid, recursive process. Neuroscientists tell us that the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for learning and complex thinking, does not do well when you're stressed out. In our class, the environment will not be stressful, but that doesn't mean that we won't work hard. When the pressure is off, many people can think more clearly and will actually find that they're more productive. In our class, I'd like to give you the space and time to develop your ideas before you're graded harshly or given detailed feedback. I'm always here to help you, but my hope is that you will come away with a sense of independence and confidence when it comes to writing. Most students struggle with essays, but please trust me when I say the struggle is all part of the process. I'm a writing teacher and a published author, and I still struggle with writing. The key, though, is that I'm mentally prepared for it, so I don't let the struggle overwhelm me or stress me out. In this class, I never want you to feel stressed out, but I do want you to struggle because this struggle is a sign that you're challenging yourself and that you're truly learning something. You'll be starting your first essay for this class very soon, so I want you to think a bit about how you usually approach an essay. How do you decide on a topic? How do you brainstorm? How do you get started with your writing? Please pause this slide and take a few moments to think about it. All of the brainstorming strategies on this slide can help you get started on an essay. Many people have a go-to brainstorming strategy that they use. And while I'll never force you to use a specific strategy, I will encourage you to try new things. In high school, you might have been taught to outline your essay before you even started writing. This is actually a bad approach for many college writers because when you're writing a complex essay, it's hard to fully envision all of your points before you start writing. For many people, the process of writing helps them figure out what they think. Listing or bulleting might work better than outlining early on because your list doesn't need to be organized, which makes it easier for a lot of people to generate ideas as they leap from thought to thought during the brainstorming process. Clustering and webbing are similar strategies that may be good for visual learners. My favorite way to get started on an essay is by free writing, which I'll ask you to practice in a moment. If you're stuck and the blank page scares you, try talking about your topic with a friend. You'd be surprised at how helpful this can be, especially for those people who dislike or fear writing. At this point in the lesson, I'm going to lead you through a few different brainstorms. all of which will help you get started on your first writing assignment for our class. We'll start with webs or clusters, which often work well for visual learners. Right now, you should get out a piece of notebook paper to create a web of words associated with your ideal classroom learning environment. The web works by association and it branches out, getting more and more specific as it goes. For example, if your topic is an ideal classroom learning environment, you should put that topic at the middle of the web, and any words that come to mind that stem out from that topic, such as room, would be on the first level. Something more specific, the words that would come on the second level from room might be descriptors of a particular room, such as clean, big, bright, etc. Now that you know how to create a web or cluster, please pause this presentation and allow yourself 5 or so minutes to write your own web on the topic of your ideal learning environment. As I noted earlier, free writing is one of my favorite ways to get started. When you free write, you aren't worried about spelling or grammar or anything else that can make you feel self-conscious as a writer. In a brainstorm free write, all you need to do is think of your topic and write whatever comes into your mind without judgment. So at this point, I'd like you to pause the presentation and allow yourself 5 or so minutes to free write on the topic of your ideal learning environment. If you're stuck, talking about your topic is a great way to get your creative juices flowing. Please pause this presentation and call a friend. Yes, I said call, and talk about what makes an ideal classroom learning environment for as long as you like. I want to remind you that there's no single right way to approach an essay. Experiment with different strategies and see what works best for you. Also, I want to remind you that it's important to understand brainstorming can happen during any stage of the writing process. You can always circle back if you run out of ideas and keep brainstorming. So don't be afraid to do this. Now that you have a better idea of how to get started on an essay, I'd like to take a few moments to talk about some common myths surrounding writers and writing. First off, one of the reasons that many people suffer from writer's block has to do with the damaging myth that writers always have a clear idea of what they want to say before they start writing. The reality is that in many cases, ideas develop during the writing process. Most great writers are aware of this. Experienced writers understand that meaning is revealed through the act of writing. Another pervasive myth is that great writers work alone. This myth is from the Romantic era, in which many people believed that solitary geniuses were divinely inspired. Clearly, if your inspiration is from a sacred source, getting feedback from mere mortals seems silly. In reality, the writing process is a social activity. All writers need feedback from others to help them revise and improve their work, and they do this each time they get feedback. Another myth is that great writers are able to do what they do quickly. The reality is that many of the best writers spend years on their extended works. While you won't be working on your essays in this class for years, you will nevertheless be asked to consider feedback and revise your work multiple times before you submit your final revision. Another damaging myth is that great writers always enjoy writing. Most, if not all, highly accomplished writers feel frustrated or stuck at times. In fact, many of the most famous writers concede that writing can be painful and arduous. Yet, all of these writers believe that getting the words right matters. Most writers ultimately feel a sense of satisfaction when they're able to clearly articulate a thought. Now that we've overturned some of the myths that make writing difficult for students, let's consider a relevant question. Please pause this presentation as you think about whether excellent written and oral communication skills are necessary to people's success. We can all point to people who have achieved impressive things despite being poor communicators. Yet, these people are often the exception, not the norm or the rule. In the majority of situations, being a great writer and/or communicator will give you a huge advantage in whichever career you pursue. In closing, I hope this lesson has helped you gain a better understanding of the writing process and how you get started. Even if you don't consider yourself to be a strong writer, with the right attitude and effort, you can do well in our class. I'm looking forward to working with you this semester.